Borderlands 4 has had a really rough week, and the game isn't even out yet. Despite this, the backlash that Randy Pitchford, the CEO of Gearbox, has gotten over his comments about if you're a real fan that you'll find a way to buy the game has been rightfully criticized and curb-stomped by everyone and then some. Randy was wrong, of course he is, he knows that, he shouldn't have said what he said. But now there's more fallout surrounding Borderlands 4 and even Grand Theft Auto 6. Both games, by the way, are under the same publishing giant Take-Two Interactive. And as you'll see from both Randy and his publishing bosses over at Take-Two, they're changing the narrative and trying to win back public trust again. But I do wonder if it's a little too late and if this begging for forgiveness is going to go the way that they want it to go. But before I get into those massive changes coming to those games that are a direct response to the shift in the marketplace and how people in general view games and what they want from them, industry types are still roasting Randy for his, moronic words. This comes from Games Radar and it's titled Baldur's Gate 3 dev calls Randy Pitchford's $80 Borderlands 4 comments gross because it implies that the first-person shooter is more important than making it day-to-day. Michael is the head of publishing at Larian Studios, and here's what he said via Twitter. Inflation exists, we give inflation bumps for example to employees, and price increases can make sense. But saying real fans will find a way is gross because it assumes that your game is more important during a cost of living crisis than, for example, making it day to day. And it's exactly this, right? This is why Randy's comments were being rightfully criticized and, torn apart. Because he proved that in that moment that he was completely out of touch with not only the players, but the general going-ons for the public. Look, it makes sense. Randy is a multi-millionaire. He's been at Gearbox since the Borderlands franchise began, and he likely has made tens of millions of dollars in salaries and bonuses off each game's major success. To confirm this, did you know that the Borderlands series overall has sold roughly 90 million copies as of right now? There isn't really concrete numbers for the first or maybe even third games, but the second game alone sold 22 million copies. That's Elden Ring levels of success. We're talking in the billions, guys. So Randy Pitchford, like all CEOs with successful products behind them, end up raking in the top percent when these games do insanely well. And of course, because of that, Randy is not exactly in touch with living costs or knowing what a housing crisis even feels like, because the guy's basic expenses are pretty much just pocket change to him, and his home or even his groceries are but a blip on his bank account for someone like him. He's privileged to like in such a way where he doesn't really need to want for really anything anymore. So of course his comments would come across as disgusting and out of touch, cause they were. And Michael of Larian Studios is right that video games today are not just really competing with other video games anymore. They're now competing with everything that you need to survive these days. We're talking food, electricity, gas for your car, medical reasons. It just keeps going. We all have our own struggles. I get it. So of course, this wouldn't go over well at all. One user replied to Michael and said this about Randy's comments: it is quite gross of a statement, though I'm not going to pretend like a video game is in competition with my day-to-day expenses. Video games are definitely a luxury. Always have been. If someone is buying a game and can't pay rent, their priorities are not right. To which Michael would then reply, luxuries are in competition with day-to-day expenses, and it's really just this. Because when I was younger and had basically zero money myself, I had to get creative and scrounge up any money I could get or find to get the latest game that I wanted. I'd even resort to turning in other games I owned for credit at EB Games, or I guess GameStop as it's now called. I didn't do that as a kid because I wanted to, because times were tough, It was hard to make my mom or dad want to buy me a game those days. I can't imagine these days some kid convincing their parents, hey, buy me this $80 or maybe even $90 game at release, never mind the expansions, that costs even more. Because that's a lot of food that you could put on the table for that same price instead. Of course, Randy Pitchford, knowing that he messed up big time, decided to post his thoughts on all of this from a panel at Pax East. And it's a lengthy rant from him that shows what he thinks, and it's clear that Randy is scrambling to change the narrative to fix things. Because he knows that if Gearbox can't fix this, they're screwed. But are they begging? Well, here, watch what Randy had to say, and then you tell me.
Randy, I got a tough one for you here.
Oh, you got a spicy one for me?
I don't know the answer. I don't know.
Why is it always me that has to do the spicy ones? All right.
What will the game's price be? That's an interesting one. I don't know this.
The price, really, now? I'll tell you the truth. I don't know. And that is the truth. I'll hit it. I'll hit it straight on. And it's an interesting time, right? We've got the on one level, we've got a competitive marketplace where people want to, or the people that make those choices want to sell as many units as possible, and they want to be careful about people that are price sensitive. So there's some folks that don't want to see prices go up, even the ones deciding what the prices are. There's other folks accepting the reality that game budgets are increasing and there's tariffs for the retail packaging, and like, it's getting gnarly out there, you guys. Borderlands 4 has more than twice the development budget than Borderlands 3. More than twice. The truth is, I don't know what the price is going to be. I do know that we will be opening pre-orders soon, TM, and that will be when the price is set. I think that Borderlands 4, here's the philosophy we have. Whatever the price is, we're entertainers. Yes, we want to get more resources so we can make bigger and better games. There's a reason why Borderlands 4 is so awesome. It's because you guys showed up and supported Borderlands 3. And we had the budget, so we could more than double the budget and feel confident in that. And that's awesome. When the revenue comes in, we could spend it to make bigger games and better games. As artists, we want everybody to have it. You know, we want to make it as easy as possible for everybody to enjoy what we're creating. So it's a weird thing, but the fundamental philosophy is we want people to buy it so we have the resources to make more, but we want everyone who buys and plays a Gearbox game to feel certain that they got the better end of the bargain. Whatever the price is, that they got the best value. And that's the philosophy that we live by. And so we're going to have a price set soon, and it might be the new price that like Nintendo and Microsoft have led with. It might be that we stay back. It's going to be the people at the publishing house that decide that. And if it is cheaper, then maybe we'll sell you that mini map that you guys want, but we'll develop later. How bad do you want that? $10? I don't know. I'm just kidding. Or am I? I'm just kidding. Or am I? I'm just kidding. Or am I? I don't know. We'll know soon. Yeah. I think it's going to be fine, whatever it ends up being. I think it's going to be amazing, whatever it is. Borderlands is amazing, and it's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah.
We haven't got kicked off stage yet. I'm just going to keep going.
And as you just saw, Randy was clearly in the hot seat and felt uncomfortable, but this answer that he gave was better than the real fan rhetoric for obvious reasons. However, there are still things to criticize and discuss. For one, he tries to use the massive budget of Borderlands 4 to justify the potential price hike. However, this still doesn't feel genuine, because in case you don't know, Borderlands 4's budget is somewhere in the $300 million mark or so. But it's not the player's fault that Gearbox and Take-Two have decided to inflate their budget so much. Of course, the idea there could be, well, it had to be this way because the game needs to compete with other big titles that are releasing around it that are also expensive. Call of Duty is a good example. They're both first-person shooters and so on, but it's still falling on deaf ears. As one user replied to Randy saying, "Our budget was too high, bro, we don't give an F." And I mean, yeah, they're right, it's not really their problem. If someone tried to justify to you the reason why their burger they're selling you needs to be $50 because of any reason that you don't care about, because at the end of their justification, whatever it is, that burger is still $50, and that's an insane price for what's being offered. So claiming because of their own free will for increasing the budget it's somehow the reason for a price increase is a null argument. Borderlands 3 did just fine and exceeded Gearbox's expectations anyways, and we know it had half the budget of 4 because Randy literally just admitted to that on stage, as you just saw. And we know that budgets don't exactly equal good products. I mean, Clair Obscur is definitely going to win Game of the Year this year, and it's been widely reported that Clair Obscur had a much smaller and reasonable budget compared to most other games. Yet despite a smaller budget and team, it was still a massive success, reviewed insanely well, and people clearly love that game. Budgets don't matter. It's like movies. Just because some slop costed $200 million doesn't suddenly make it better than a horror film that was made for like $2 million. Budgets and the size of your wallet doesn't make up for a lack of personality personality or talent pretty much. And again, the whole I don't know what the price will be, but then also insinuating that Borderlands 4 could be following the Microsoft Nintendo higher prices thing is just gaslighting at its finest. Because Randy knows the price. He even says in that clip that pre-orders for Borderlands 4 will be opening soon, and that only then they would know the price. Come on, guys, this has been decided way back already. Randy is just terrified now to hit that big red button and then have pre-orders go live. You ask me, the game is going to be $80 digitally and $90 physically American. There's no way in hell that they don't do that. They're going to use any sort of mental gymnastics to justify it. Well, the game is coming to Xbox, which is owned by Microsoft, so we're just complying with their prices now. Also, Borderlands 4 is coming to Nintendo Switch too. We don't want to undercut Nintendo's first-party titles there, so naturally, this means we gotta be $80 or we'll look like dicks to Nintendo. It's just a bunch of greedy executives in a room that are pointing and shifting the blame to the other executive until you get dizzy, spinning around, and then forget why you were even mad in the first place. Another user would reply to Randy posting that video, and here's what they said. Yeah, tariffs and cost of physical packaging is a terrible excuse. 90% of games sold since like 2020 have been digital, which should mean costs have actually gone down. Also, it's not the consumer's fault you decided to have bloated budgets and hire people that you don't need to make this. Claire Obscure Expedition 33 exposed all of this in the industry. Game was made by 30 devs and had a reasonable budget. And not only was it great and gonna be Game of the Year, but it was only $50. None of this also changes the fact that you just told fans of the series they aren't real fans unless they find a way to afford buying this game no matter the cost. Harsh words, but hey, they're right. I've exposed aplenty already on this channel how game budgets and dev team sizes have been over bloated for needless reasons in the past. Of course, the reason for the AAA bloat was due to COVID and the pandemic. Studios were freaking out at that time because there was this new normal meta that was, gaining traction. People were forced inside. They had nowhere to go, so they were kind of ripe targets for games to play and buy. So these studios bulked up like crazy across the industry because, everyone was working from home. So we saw tons of investments coming in. Around this time in 2020 was the whole big DEI and ESG boom. For lack of a better word, investors were obsessed with investing into companies that push diversity and all that slop too. It didn't really work, we know that already. It led to a lot of games failing and studios just closing down. But as I've shown in so many other videos already, the big ask for those investments from economic, social, and governance, or ESG for short, was that studios had to hire people based on skin color and gender and not merit like they used to. Which is how so many studios suddenly had a bunch of people being hired or put into leadership positions that were incompetent and incapable of running a studio properly. I remember talking to a few insiders at Ubisoft before, and them telling me how the people in charge of entire departments at Ubisoft, and I'm not kidding, were women that were usually who couldn't even speak neither English nor French properly and also spoke in heavy ethnic accents that pretty much made them impossible to understand for most people at Ubisoft. And how does that even happen? Well, ESG money, obviously. And this money was taken by a lot of Western studios. Wouldn't be surprised if Gearbox did take some too at some point as well. So while I'm sure that Gearbox is massive dev-wise, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's for the better. Oblivion was made by just over 100 people back in the day, yet Starfield was made by 500 people at Bethesda too. And you tell me which game is more universally loved and also sold better. We know the answer, but it proves the point regardless. Look, Randy can try to justify the pricing all he wants, that the game needs to cost more because they decided to add 200 ESG developers so they could bank that investment or whatever other reason that he can muster up. The end result is still going to be the same. He showed his hand, he exposed himself, and now he's reaping the whirlwind. And he, alongside the rest of Gearbox, can beg all they want for forgiveness, to give context. None of it really makes what he said better. If they now announce that Borderlands 4 is at $80 officially, the internet is going to go Super Saiyan 2, maybe even 3, at the inevitable reality that every game now is going to be charging an insane amount of money for their new games going forward. We already saw that these prices aren't working for most new games, but it's clear that the industry, they don't really care anymore. They think that they can get away with it, and look guys, I pushed the Gamergate stuff myself. I rallied people to push back against companies when they were filling your games with nonsense and then some. Maybe the players need to reject this new pricing meta too, because if not in the future, games might end up being $90 or I don't even know, maybe even $100 American eventually too. And that's like $130 or $140 Canadian at that point for a single game. You'd be out of your mind to think people would pay that. But it gets worse for Take-Two's public image, or maybe better, depending depending on how you look at it. So I referenced how Take-Two, the publishing giant that runs Gearbox, and Rockstar, that does Grand Theft Auto and Borderlands, have actually admitted defeat and shifted goalposts, so let's look into that info now. This comes from GameFile.com, it's their exclusive, and it's titled, Take-Two removes praise for its LGBTQ efforts from its annual report, scrubs diversity references. GameFile combed the latest annual reports from Take-Two and EA, finding numerous fine print changes, some serious, some not, some seemingly in reaction to Donald Trump. So, you're probably wondering, how does this affect Borderlands? Well, a lot actually. The article starts by saying this: Grand Theft Auto, NBA 2K, and Borderlands publisher Take-Two Interactive has deleted references to diversity and inclusion from its annual report to investors this year, and a list of employment awards it boasts about each year no longer includes 2 accolades it was granted for its support of LGBTQ employees. They continue by saying, the changes resemble the disappearance of diversity language from the most recent annual reports for some of America's biggest corporations, including Disney, Google, GM, and Intel. Those firms deleted or softened their DEI language from their big corporate filings, according to a report from NPR in February. 10K reports are filed by all publicly traded companies in the United States to inform investors about its operations. They offer a thorough look at how a company defines itself, how its business works, the risks it believes it faces, and how it has all performed financially. Take-Two has not explained its changes and declined to comment when asked about them. So, what does this mean for Borderlands? It's actually a big positive reason. This also applies to Grand Theft Auto 6, by the way, too. So I reported a while back about how Rockstar was pushing DEI brainwashing courses on their white developers, which is true even to this day. That actually happened. And they were forced into basically watching some lady guilt trip these white developers specifically until they renounced their whiteness and then admitted that they were racist for simply being white themselves. By the way, when I did that report months back, not a single black developer was a part of that same program, and funny how that works. Like I said before, with the DEI ESG investment money, a lot of strings came attached to these sorts of things. Between 2020 to about 2024, these DEI consultants reigned supreme and made bank, pushing made-up problems on studios, while also offering the solutions to the problems they created for their clients. DEI consultants were like someone who owns a company that makes glass windows but also pays someone to go around town smashing windows with bricks so that these businesses would have no choice but then to buy glass windows from them. This me-made-up problem thing, which usually could be summarized as, there's too many white developers here, or there's not enough black females in charge, shook up a lot of these companies. And like I said before, it led to race and gender being the prevailing reasons for one's advancement instead of skill or merit. This push for this DEI slop also led to what's called brain drain within an industry too, which if you don't know, brain drain is a term for when highly skilled individuals in their field leave that field for another industry without imparting their knowledge to others in that field upon leaving themselves. Therefore, they leave the industry, let's say video game making, and then take their wells of knowledge with them, leaving the industry the worse because they left with their skill and talent, hence brain drain. 80level.com spoke to Ben Starr in 2024 as seen here. If you don't know, he's the voice actor for Clive in Final Fantasy 16 and Verso in Clair Obscur recently too. He also was Kazan in that game too. He's been busy, but anyways. Ben Starr spoke on the layoffs that devastated the games industry in 2024 as many games failed and did poorly. By the way, most of them were the very games made and funded by the DEI ESG money that I spoke about earlier. But anyways, with that mass layoff, a lot of devs with knowledge left the industry, as Ben Starr said here, which reads, there seems to be a lot of companies that are having to make hard decisions and they are losing great people from this industry, and there's a bit of a brain drain. So why does this matter, and how does it relate to Borderlands and GTA? Well, with this new change to Take-Two's overall company policy, it means that these games have pivoted and so too have their design philosophies to hopefully not treat devs based on the color of their skin like they were before. And it would also mean that many devs who are talented do not leave the industry if they are being treated fairly again and not being pushed aside due to all of the stupid nonsense that was plaguing the industry or still is. What it also means is that hopefully, I can't confirm yet obviously, but hopefully this means that Borderlands 4 and GTA 6 have now made the smart decision to completely avoid the man-hating pro-women are the bestest ever narrative that so many games tried to push in the past already and failed at. For an example, Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon is now officially out, which I'm also playing. That's a good game. It does have technical issues, but it is getting better, but the game at least has zero DEI ESG nonsense in it. Even the character creator is explicitly labeled as male or female as gender with 0 body types on offer. And these sorts of stupid made for the modern audience Steven's choices are always done because of that DEI stupidity, and thankfully Tainted Girl doesn't do that. And if Take-Two is 100% confirming that they too are done with these ideas also, it's only a net positive for their games going forward, and that does include Borderlands 4 too. Of course, this likely doesn't make the usual types happy, because it's one of the biggest publishers admitting defeat that the people who were against the slop were actually right all along, and that the players who refused to buy DEI games basically won in the end pretty much. And it's extra hilarious for me though, because the guy who wrote this article about Take-Two abandoning DEI slop is the same guy whose name is Steven Totilo, by the way, who actually used to run Kotaku back in the day. And Steven is also the same guy who back in 2023 wrote an entire article for Axios.com when Hogwarts Legacy was coming out, and how Axios would not cover or make guides for Hogwarts Legacy because it would only benefit J.K. Rowling, who they deem transphobic. Here's Steven's article about that, by the way, and it's titled Hogwarts Legacy game launch becomes referendum on J.K. Rowling. So I just know that it hurts extra hard and stings even worse for Steven now that he has to write this article on Borderlands 4's publisher, abandoning the very things that he has championed just 2 years ago. And yeah, Steven, if you're watching this, you thought I would forget about the Hogwarts Legacy thing? Nah, man, the internet doesn't forget, buddy, and neither will I. How's it going over there with being a champion of DEI these days? Well, let's read what you said about it yourself, shall we? Here's Steven summarizing how Take-Two saw the world's politics then versus now. He clearly states that they've completely abandoned DEI in every way pretty much going forward, and that one's got a sting for Steven. Oh, but it keeps on going. Oh, this one's got to be brutal for Steven to write. Here's what he said. Take-Two in 2024, we firmly believe that diverse teams are more valuable and effective, and that diversity is key to our success. Take-Two in 2025, we firmly believe that diversity of thought drives the innovation that is integral to our success. Oh, Steven, my boy, that one's gotta hurt to click send tweet on, didn't it? Diversity of thought over skin color and gender now? Man, that's gotta suck for journalists, dude. Take-Two genuinely just stated they value people who think differently amongst their teams now, which means they're not just gonna parrot and push liberal DI nonsense anymore, but allow other people to be more vocal on different viewpoints in their companies. That means conservatives, libertarians, you name it. I just know that Steven is gripping his desk and biting his laptop when that got confirmed, because these types were so hellbent on the future just being genderless and full of propaganda that they could parrot for the rest of time, but then the market spoke and man, they lost badly. But look, it does make me more excited for Take-Two games knowing that they're no longer going to be in theory held down by diversity consultants, and hopefully that Borderlands 4's humor and story is going to be far more in line with, Borderlands 2 maybe. I'm hoping at least, because the last thing Borderlands and Grand Theft Auto needs right now is some overpaid diversity consultant breathing down their necks to ensure that they don't make jokes at the expense of others they deem protected classes. Of course, in GTA 6's case, we do know they confirmed that they wouldn't make fun of transgender people in GTA 5, because they removed it, which does in fact confirm that Rockstar is considering them still a protected class, while other people are not, I guess, which is biased. However, that article about removing transgender jokes from GTA 5 is a few years old now, and we also know that GTA 6 got delayed till, May 2026, so maybe they're seeing the writing on the wall, the same way that Take-Two did, and they're realizing that if they go down this modern audience humor police direction, it will make their games worse for it. And Borderlands 4 already has enough hurdles as it is, and the last thing it needs is jokes that poke fun at the players yet again, because it will definitely cause people to just boycott the game pretty much going forward. But it's hilarious still that their parent company just went, yeah, we don't care about the identity politics stuff anymore. But regardless of Borderlands publisher dumping DEI to encourage fans to support them in the future, the damage is still monumental due to Randy either way. Even Screen Rant as seen here spoke about Randy, and they bring up some good points. They also compare what Randy said about Borderlands to what Doug Bowser said about Nintendo Switch 2 prices, which reads, Randy Pitchford isn't the only one to have said something like this. Speaking to CBC, Nintendo's Doug Bowser explained that Nintendo is aware that there are some people that may not be able to afford the Switch 2's price point, which is why they wanted to make the other Switch platforms available. He was ostensibly saying that if you can't afford a Switch 2, there's always the original Switch. Not unlike when the former head of Xbox, Dan Matrix, infamously told people to buy the Xbox 360 if they didn't like the Xbox One's connection requirements. And it's literally just that. Yes, like I said, these are criminally out of touch rich people who don't understand the concept of living paycheck to paycheck themselves. And Screen Rant then says this, comparing Claire Obscure and Kingdom Come 2, which were commercial success stories with lower prices than Borderlands 4 with this. It is also worth noting that both of those games have been considered commercial successes as well as critical ones by their developers, even despite their lower price tags. Of course, both games likely cost a lot less to make than Mario World and Borderlands 4, but then that is a further issue with the industry. Indie games and AA games have managed to be critical and commercial successes despite their smaller scale, lower budgets, and cheaper price tags when compared to a lot of AAA games that do poorly due to inflated budgets and result in massive layoffs. And that's the issue at the heart of this. If your game costs too much to make, it needs to do gangbusters or you're screwed. That's not a way to make games anymore. And I think the perfect way to end this video is with this part where Screen Rant says this: if $80 games are the new normal, the industry could be in trouble. People may stop buying video games completely. And that is the ultimate oh crap moment that I think is coming for many of these new games in the future, is that through sheer hubris and believing that they're just too big to fail, that many games are going to adopt these price points, not realizing that many people will simply just not buy their games on principle alone. But let's be real, Borderlands 4 a year from now will have its updated edition announced with DLC attached and then some. And by then, its bugs will be fixed, balance changes aplenty, and quality of life fixes too will be in that version. So a lot of people are starting to realize why buy a game at full price that is going to be worse and more expensive when they can just wait and buy it for cheaper and it'll be better later on too. So right now, we are on that teetering point. If Randy's Borderlands 4 is a major success, it will vindicate and cause other publishers to also push their games at higher prices. Because if Borderlands can get away with it despite all of this happening around it, I mean, why can't they? But if it fails or leads to mass layoffs, we could be seeing a big change going forward. It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes down either way. I'll likely review the game for the channel the same way I did Shadows and more, but for the everyday gamer, I wonder if they will just skip out on this to send a message or not. So my question to you before I go is Borderlands 4 still worth it to you, or will you wait? Will you just not buy it at all on principle alone? Let me know in the comments. What about Take-Two's abolishment of DEI completely? Is that good or bad? Do you even believe them at this point? Thanks for watching, subscribe, have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.